Drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers in 1982, Ron Hexdoll took the entire league by storm once finally getting his shot at the NHL level. The 1986-87 season would be Hexdoll's rookie season and would also be the fans' first taste at the talented yet aggressive netminder. Ron would begin his NHL career swinging, literally, as he would swing his stick at Brad Smith and later Troy Murray, concerning many. But he insists that his temper was once actually a lot worse, stating, quote, "I used to be worse. I've learned to control my temper." Once he adjusted and calmed down, Hexdoll would begin to seriously impress. He would play in 66 games, posting 37 wins, a .902 save percentage, and a 3 goals against average, but despite that success, would finish second in Calder voting, losing out to Luc Robitaille. How would he respond to such defeat? By winning the Vezina Trophy instead, being named the league's best goaltender in just his first year in the league. Hexdoll would carry that success into the postseason, as the Flyers would go on an exciting run to the 1987 Stanley Cup Final, being backed by Hexdoll the entire way. Throughout their journey, Hexdoll would play exceptionally well. Flyers head coach Dan Poulin even recognized how impactful he was, calling him the best performer on the team. And so did Wayne Gretzky, who admitted he was, quote, "probably the best goaltender he's ever played against." Hexdoll would help the Flyers reach Game 7 against the Edmonton Dynasty, but ultimately the Oilers would win their third cup in 4 years, ending Ron's historical season. However, Hexdoll made it even more historical by becoming one of 5 players to take home the Conn Smythe Trophy despite losing in the final. But recording 2 shutouts and a .908 save percentage was extremely good back then, and Hexdoll's performance all throughout the playoffs made him a rightful and deserving winner. Hexdoll isn't the only player to have ever went on a crazy tear in the postseason, and in fact, like mentioned, isn't the only player to have won playoff MVP after coming short, as another goaltender years later would do the same thing, except with a much harder path and much greater numbers. On June 10th, 2000, the Calgary Flames would once again make a foolish trade, sending goaltender Jean-Sébastien Jger to the Anaheim Mighty Ducks in exchange for a second-round pick. Jger would start in the Ducks farm system for the 2000-2001 season until becoming the team's backup goaltender. He would play in just 34 games until re-signing with the club for the 01-02 season, eventually becoming the Ducks starting goaltender. His numbers would continue to improve, and he would have his first winning season during the 02-03 season, going 34, 22, and 6, and his success would help his 7th-seeded Mighty Ducks make the playoffs. Headed in, the Ducks had little to no expectations of making it anywhere. That is, until Jger would go on one of the greatest runs in Stanley Cup playoff history. The Ducks would pull off a huge upset in round 1, sweeping the defending Stanley Cup champion Detroit Red Wings thanks to Jger's impressive .965 save percentage, and the following round, they would take down the Dallas Stars as Jean would post a .936 save percentage. Facing the Minnesota Wild in the Western Conference Final, Jger would rack up a, get this, .992 save percentage. I wish I was actually wrong. These numbers are absolutely insane for any goaltender, and especially come playoff time. Jger would carry his 7th-seeded team all the way to the Stanley Cup Final, but would sadly fall short of winning the ultimate prize. Luckily, his insane efforts would not go unnoticed, as Jger would hands down be named playoff MVP. Jger's 03 story is absolutely amazing to retell, and it makes the story even better when mentioning that just 4 years later in 2007, Jger would once again reach the final, this time leaving with a Stanley Cup. The story of the 1994 Rangers cannot be told without telling the story of Mark Messier, as it wasn't necessarily his point totals that made his playoff run crazy, but more so his leadership and gutsiness, as Messier would show the entire hockey world just how great of a leader he really was. One of the biggest moments of the entire 94 run was Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Final, as almost everyone remembers Messier stating,
"We will win Game 6.
And it is mainly as iconic as it is, as not only did Mark promise a win, but he backed his claim up to the extreme.
Yeah, Kovalev to Messier. Messier shot! Score! They tied the game! Mark Messier! Putting it in. Leach drops it. Kovalev again. Save, run, goal, rebound, score! Mark Messier gets his second goal. The Rangers lead 3-2. For the empty net, Mark Messier. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? He said we will win Game 6. He has just picked up the hat trick.
After going down 2-0, Messier would not just score a goal, but 3 goals, backing up his guarantee in one of the most badass ways possible. Not only did they win Game 6, but they'd obviously win the following game thanks to taking down New Jersey and eventually taking home the Stanley Cup. And you would think that after all that madness that Messier would hands down win the Conn Smythe Trophy, right? Well, a lot of people tend to forget just how good of a playoffs Rangers defenseman Brian Leetch had that postseason as well. The entire 94 run is highlighted by Messier's guarantee and Matteau's miraculous game winner, but it really overshadows just how impressive Leetch was. As fun fact, Brian would have 4 game-winning goals, and one of those goals is the reason as to why everything I just mentioned was able to happen. As in a big Game 5 versus Washington in the second round of the playoffs, Leetch would score the dagger, sending New York to New Jersey. Leetch would finish that 94 postseason, recording 23 assists and 34 points, winning the Conn Smythe Trophy along the way. Only one other defenseman has been able to reach the 30-plus plateau in the postseason, and that player is the legendary Paul Coffey, showing just how great of a run Leetch was able to have. When arguing about who the best goaltender of all time is, 3 names mainly come to mind: Brodeur, Hasek, and Waugh. And if you're talking about the best who never play in the NHL, then it's hands down Vladislav Tretiak. But a lot of people tend to leave a certain someone out of the equation during these conversations, and that someone, in my opinion, is Terry Sawchuck. And he would further prove my point during the 1952 playoffs, as he would go on one of the most dominant runs in postseason history. Back in the 50s, there were only 2 rounds of the playoffs, so to have a perfect win, you would have to win 8 games, and that's exactly what Sawchuck and the Wings did en route to winning the 1952 Stanley Cup. Sawchuck was virtually unstoppable, giving a whole new meaning to the term brick wall, as the Wings would first sweep the Maple Leafs and then the Habs, winning it all. And in those 8 games, Sawchuck would only allow a total of 5 goals the entire playoffs, and would also record shutouts in 5 of those 8 games. He was insane. If the Conn Smythe Trophy existed that year, he'd hands down be named playoff MVP. Sawchuck's performance is the most impressive by any goaltender ever, but in terms of greatest performances of all time, there's still 2 more we need to talk about, and conveniently enough, we'll be talking about none other than Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky. First to Lemieux, as his run during the 91-92 season that eventually led to the team's first ever Stanley Cup was incredible. In fact, his entire season that year was incredible, as Lemieux would unfortunately miss 54 games due to a back injury, but once returning to the ice in 26 games, he would record 19 goals and 26 assists, producing 45 points, and was looking extremely hot headed into the postseason. Luckily for Pittsburgh, Lemieux would carry over his regular season success into the playoffs, as he would score 16 goals and 28 assists, finishing the run with 44 points in 33 games, and a Conn Smythe Trophy to back it up. Lemieux's point totals were so high that he was leading in points by double digits over second place Mark Recchi, who had 33 points, and his 2 short-handed goals would be tied for first place with Russ Courtnall. Also, you can't mention Lemieux's 91 playoffs without showcasing arguably one of the best goals in his entire career against the Minnesota North Stars.
Here's Lemieux. The center penalty coming up. Look at Lemieux. Oh my heavens. What a goal. What a move. Lemieux. Oh baby.
The following season, Mario would once again dominate and would follow up the 91 win with another Stanley Cup in 1992. Finally, of course, we have Wayne Gretzky, but not just any Wayne Gretzky, 1985 Wayne Gretzky. See, the entire 1985 Oilers can technically count as their own spot in this video, as they are possibly one of the greatest teams of all time. But that 85 playoffs proved to be magical for a handful of players besides 99. Jari Kurri would score 19 goals and 12 helpers, Coffey would produce 25 assists and 12 goals, Messier would score 12 goals and 13 assists, and Glenn Anderson would record 26 points in total, proving just how absolutely crazy that 85 team really was. Yet, despite those guys having such jaw-dropping numbers, Wayne's final stat line is by far better, and that's saying something. Gretzky in those 18 playoff games would score 17 goals, but would also record 30 assists for a total of 47 points, absolutely shattering the record books. He would, of course, take home the Conn Smythe Trophy and would help the Edmonton Oilers capture their second consecutive Stanley Cup. Throughout today's video, we've seen players of all positions show just how dominant one can truly become come playoff time, but some especially showed that it doesn't matter whether you win or lose in the end, as sometimes all it takes is confidence, determination, and a little bit of luck to prove that you are one of the greatest players and performers of all time.